Hey, thanks for making it to Veterans Preference. We are glad you made it. Look, we have several topics to talk about today. And, one of the ones that we're going to talk about, and we're going to front load it with this just because it's a big deal. The 2.9, nearly $3 billion shortfall from the VA for this fiscal year, which ends in less than 2 months, right? So it ends the end of September. Here we are in August, and they're short nearly $3 billion for our benefits. Do I think that Congress is going to make them whole? Do I think that veterans are going to get their benefits squared away and we're not going to realize any major issues? Sure. But you know what? Congress is pissed. And I believe, personally, you guys might be different, don't know. But I think that the VA has dropped the ball so many times this last 2-3 years that this is another I don't know what you want to call it, another stumble that is huge from the VA. And I think that some congressional members are frustrated with the VA's lack of transparency, lack of ability to forecast, lack of ability to understand their own budgets, and to be short $3 billion with 2 months remaining. Look, here's the thing, guys. I think when I think of this, I think of there's probably not really any other organization as easy to probably forecast than the VA. You know how many claims are in process. You know how long your average claim processing time is. You know what your average award amount is. It's pretty easy to go, we got this many claims in this month. We're deciding this many. You could throw all that into a spreadsheet and have somebody figure it all out and give a great forecast and probably come in much less than $3 billion at the last second here. I'm not upset that they're off. I'm upset by the magnitude. I don't think that they should have been off this much. And I also think that they should have really been warning the VA way earlier. Now, look, before we jump into this article on this, I just want to, I feel like I'm just going to keep talking. So I want to hand it over to you, Randy. Just get this is not a new topic, but there is some more information coming out. I want to pass it to you, down to Chris, then we'll jump into this article and kind of see what's going on.
Hey, I echo everything you're saying, brother. This is not something that should have been missed. This is not something that wasn't foreseeable. What I'm frustrated with here is the timing. So we are now into early August and alarm bells are starting to ring. And granted, the VA raised a few points on this a little while back, but Congress holds the purse strings. And the fact that these problems are coming out when Congress is, in recess, there's a lot of elected representatives that are on vacation, that are back in their home districts, that aren't in DC. DC is more or less a ghost town this time of year. I know I was stationed there for a while. This is the wrong time to be bringing problems. And I don't mean little problems. I mean big problems that could affect your payments from the VA starting very soon. This is the wrong time to be bringing these issues to the table and saying, hey, I got to gather one of the most dysfunctional groups of people on earth, which is Congress, together and get a patch in place. Now, I know there are some good congressmen out there. I'm not insulting the entirety of our legislative branch of government. I'm just saying that collectively as a body often is very dysfunctional. And, when you've got a major problem, waiting till the last minute isn't appropriate. Good news does not get better with time. Bad news does not get better with time. Get it all out there. So that's my take. Chris Galley, I'm going to throw it down to you. Get your take, and then we can dive into this article that we've got.
Yes, it was previously mentioned that there would be a shortfall, and I think that was obvious. Yes, $3 billion is, if my Cajun math serves me correctly, less than 1% of the $370 billion that's in the VA's budget. But $3 billion.
VA's budget, I think, is about $195 a year.
On the benefit side. So you're taking the
Yeah.
whole is 300, but the benefits, which this has affected, is sub half that probably, or about half. So you're talking
So
2%.
yeah, so let's say it's half. Regardless, it's still $3 billion. So I think Jay says, if I came into a budget meeting with an ask for three billion, I'd get fired on the spot, because especially after some understandable asks that came before this, and we've talked about this on this channel about how each time it seems like each time we're fighting, we're coming for more, that you can only do that so many times. And so you have to have your act together. So when you're going after something that's meaningful, they trust you, right? What they're doing is eroding trust, and they're eroding trust in a fiscally challenging time frame, with a logistically challenging time frame, as Randy had mentioned, to try to get anything through. And as we know, our country will probably make everybody whole. But the question is it going to come with a month, 2 months, 3 months, a year of back pay having to be paid? So people have to really stress about when is that money coming. So, yeah, this is just mismanagement.
Yeah. Chris, you bring up a good point. It's the almost equally as important as the dollar figures is the perceptions and the mistrust aspects of it all, because that is going to be the lingering effect, right? I'm 100% with you on that. Sure, when you take a look at it, the percentage wise, sure, for an annual time frame, it's not a huge percentage, but we can condense that down to a 2-month period now, instead of you can't throw it out over a year's time frame. So there's a little bit difference there too. I don't know. And we also have to look at, let's just be real for a second. We are in an election year. This is part of the president's cabinet, right? And even though the current president's not running, they're going to have somebody from that party who's running. Well, I don't even know. I think it's official. Harris is running, and she's trying to pick her VP or whatever. And so now you have that cabinet who is trying to look good during an election year. That's the reality. You want these places to look good. It's not my fault. We're trying to get this forward. So those elected officials in the same party aren't going to try to make the cabinet look bad, in my opinion. So then you got the other side, which is going to try to, and push for answers and those types of things. And it would probably be flip-flopped if it was the other way around currently, right? So this is just our political game, and anybody who thinks that it's not like that is probably under a rock. So it's sad that this is the state of the situation that we're in. Do I think that the VA needs to be pressed? Sure, I do, because it's unacceptable. But anyway, let's jump into this and see what's going on. I'm going to read a little bit for you guys with my outstanding 7th grade reading level, and we'll jump into it. All right, Senate conservatives are showing early resistance to expediting legislation to address a roughly $3 billion budget shortfall for the Department of Veterans Affairs, as officials warn millions of veterans' benefits are at risk in the coming weeks. Some senators have been hopeful of passing the bipartisan bill this week amid growing concerns over the shortfall. However, the effort is getting pushback from some conservatives as Republicans have raised scrutiny over the issue. There's a couple quotations, and then we'll kind of unpack some of that. When we spend billions of dollars, we should ask, are your controls in place that it's spent wisely? Where is it spent? Said Senator Rand Paul. And he told this to The Hill on Tuesday afternoon. We gave them record amount of dollars, and it's basically gone. So there's another one here. So somebody made bad decision making or bad management. So all that needs to be discussed and worked through. And that's why I would never let it go through without a discussion, he said. So look, what happened? Does it need to get fixed? Do you have things in place? Why are we short? Did you have the money? Because you said you did, but then you said that if you found out you didn't, then you would let us know, and then you wait till the last minute. It all seems a bit kooky. What are your guys' thoughts on that so far? Chris, we'll jump over to you.
Yeah, I mean, again, I've been in situations where there were unexpected impacts to a budget, but there's a way that you got to bring everybody in the loop, and you bring even if you're trying to figure out if it's going to be as bad as you think it's going to be, don't wait until you figure out that it is. And so, hope is not a strategy, and hoping that the budget would actually not be as bad. Hoping that the team might figure out a way to, make that 2.9 billion a little bit more palatable. It just seems to be, we used to call it in Army a little bit of the greasing of the skids that was needed here, and didn't appear that happened. And we spoke earlier about the impacts of that, and the impact on building trust, and yes, it is political, but I could totally understand why Tuberville and Rand Paul and anybody on any side of the aisle would be throwing up the WTF flag, right? Randy, what do you think?
Yeah, let's back up a little bit here. I'll give you my personal take. Both of you jump in if I'm getting this wrong in your opinion, but this is a series of dominoes that have fallen, that have gotten to this point, right? So going back a couple of years in time, we have, the PACT Act that drops. The PACT Act comes with, certain benefits, presumptive positive, all of these things, right? And then there is a window of time. So PACT Act is signed. There's a window of time looking forward into the future in which you can get your benefits back to the beginning of the PACT Act. And then there's this little thing called intent to file. So if you drop that before the deadline, it extends it out even further. That gets you to right about where we're at right now. This is the time frame in which the last of the intent to files for the PACT Act are coming up and expiring. So over this period of time, the several year period of time, you have all these people that have raised a hand and say, hey, I want these benefits, and rightly so, because the PACT Act is addressing a very serious problem, and I think it was good legislation. But what that did is it caused a ramp in usage, a ramp in contact with the VA, people coming into VA health, people applying for benefits, on and on and on. That was entirely foreseeable back when the PACT Act was signed. Remember, going back, what was it, Jason? We're back in August of 2022, I think, is when the PACT Act was signed, right?
Yeah.
So let's go even further back before that, when the legislation, there was quite a long period of time where that legislation was negotiated. So, they knew what was going to happen once that legislation dropped. Then the legislation dropped. Then the window, to get the benefits ended in August of 2023 that were retroactive all the way back to the beginning. And then you got your intent to file. There has been like 3 or 4 gates here, guys, where, the VA knew it was coming. The VA knew it was coming when the PACT Act was, negotiated. The VA knew it was coming when the PACT Act was signed. The VA knew it was coming back last August when, that first cutoff happened. And the VA knew it was coming, here in August. But it's too late now. Now they're raising a flag and saying, oh, crap, we've got a serious budget shortfall because of increased contact, increased usage. On our last episode, we went through the whole, laundry list of excuses that are out on the table right now. And I'm not going to go through that again. But the point that I'm trying to make is this was foreseeable. This was a knowable outcome. And so Paul and Tuberville, regardless of what your political beliefs are asking questions from a rational place. Why are we here when we knew this was going to happen? And I don't begrudge them or I'm not angry that they're asking these questions and want to know what in the hell was going through the minds of the folks over at the VA or anyone that was, cooking this into the budget that was passed, way back when. So that's my take. It's just, guys, there's a lot anxiety in the veteran community is on the way up. And, you know, there's a lot of folks that are worried about the direction of this department. And I know over the years, there's been, you know, stuff all over the map, but there has been a serious number of major missteps, you know, lately, and not small, but big ones. And we're not getting a lot of accountability. And I know it's an election year and this is not a sexy topic to cover. And so the mainstream media isn't talking about this, but it is a serious problem and there needs to be some accountability, and this can't keep happening. We cannot keep every year when we know our budget is we're going to need more, and we just ball it up. We cannot keep having this happen.
So Randy,
I'm sorry, I'm on a roll. I'll turn it over to you.
I'm gonna keep you on the roll. Throw your CFO hat on, and so let's say I'm the secretary of the VA, and I'm coming. Like, what are some of the things that you liked to see when you were doing CFO work that, you know, showed people that they were operating in good faith? For example, they knew a long time ago that this could be 1 million or more people claims. They also could probably make some level of projection based upon data that they have on how much these claims would cost. And they probably, you know, I don't know how much money was funded originally when the PACT Act was signed, but they got something, I assume. And like, wouldn't you expect that they had a model that said, hey, if we end up with 1.5 million, here's what we think we're going to need. And some of those things, some of those gates get somewhat pre-approved, if you will, right? So if you were the CFO of Congress here, and you know, you had the secretary of the VA come in and saying, oh yeah, by the way, we're going to be $3 billion more in the hole. Like, what would you expect from that person to make this not roll out the way that it's rolled out?
So inherently, a good CFO is a good financial data storyteller. And they want to be forward-looking as well as rearward-looking. So, you know, a good CFO is going to look at past historical data that is as accurate as it possibly can. And then they take that and they tell a story about where the company, organization, nonprofit, whatever you have, is going. And you set strategic goals, and then you figure out if you can financially get there within reason based off of the CFO and his team or her team's data storytelling. The concern that I have here is this data was available, at least somewhat, you know, within reason. There was a knowable outcome from when the PACT Act was signed regarding how many folks within, you know, a quarter of a standard deviation or whatever it may have been, were going to sign up. And then to Jason's point earlier, there's an impact on claims, there's an impact on VA health, there's an impact on the VA workforce. All of those things are knowable, right? They know the average size of the claim here. You know, so I don't expect them 2 or 3 years ago to know an exact number, but I think they should be able to get within a reasonable benchmark, and they're not there. I mean, they missed it by a mile here. And, you know, frankly, if this was the private sector, anybody that put together these forecasts would be done. I mean, they would not have a job. The miss is just too big, and there has to be accountability. So that's my answer to you, Chris. Jason, I'll throw it back to you.
Yeah.
I've been on a tear here.
Yeah. No, I love it. So I'm going to throw this in there, and I'm going to condense it. Okay. To your point, there has been a calamity of errors. I've rattled them off before as well. Big, not small little things, big things that leadership should be questioned about, probably 4, 5, 6 things over the last 3 years or so. And I preface it with this because one of the most recent quotes, and I'm going to have to paraphrase it, I don't remember it, from the VA secretary regarding this current $3 billion shortfall, when asked, so what sort of contingency plan do you have in place? Well, we don't really have one. We're really just focused on getting the money. And in my mind, I'm thinking to myself, that's exactly why all these other 6 things happened. because you didn't have a contingency plan for any of them. You hoped for number one and it didn't happen. And then you ended up with all these other problems. And so here we are with there's only one way out, and they have no clue how they're going to deal with it any other way other than to get bailed out, essentially. So, and again, do I think it's going to happen? Sure. But it's just the mismanagement of it all. This should have been a discussion 4 months ago, 5 months ago, not last minute, especially prior to the bill, the Veterans Affairs bill and military construction bill, all that stuff getting finalized on the House's side, getting marked up on the Senate side. Then they come in and go, oh, yeah, I know we're a little late to the table, but we're short. It's unsettling. All right, let's jump back into this article and see what else they say here. All right, so the VA has said it needs Congress to provide about $2.9 billion in mandatory benefits funds for the fiscal year ending in late September. I don't know why they said late September, the end of September, as well as about $12 billion for medical care for the following fiscal year. The agency has cited the PACT Act passed in 2022 has been a key driver behind the shortfall, pointing to increases in enrollment and VA healthcare appointments and application benefits. Senators have discussed the prospect of expediting passage of the legislation, which addresses the nearly $3 billion shortfall, before they leave for August recess this week. But that process, also known as an omnibus consent, can also be held up if a single senator opposes passage. Senator Tommy Tuberville also said that he has a hold on the bill while pressing for a hearing. They don't want the VA to just walk away unscathed. Just, another issue that gets, fixed because they can't manage it. It's sad when you see a department like this that has to be managed essentially by Congress. No, you should manage yourself. I mean, but to have the Congress step in and really figure out if you're doing the right things is ridiculous. So there's a quotation. I just want to know why. Don't send a letter over saying we need $3 billion. Let us know why you need it. Let us ask you questions on both sides. It's only fair, he said on Wednesday afternoon. Though he added he is supportive of overall of providing the funding to address the shortfall. And let's remember, this is taxpayer money, right? We want to make sure that these funds aren't being, look, they paid themselves, the executive team, $10 million. So who's to say they didn't, screw up somewhere, right? So the sentiment comes as more have also sounded the alarm over the issue. The problem is that if we don't get this solved very quickly, it could start affecting benefits in October. And so I'm very worried about it, said Senator Susan Collins, top Republican on the Senate Appropriations Committee, which crafts all 12 annual government funding bills. I'm also incredibly frustrated with the VA because they had to know that they were underfunding these accounts. And I just don't buy the argument that they had no idea that what's going to happen, right? She said that's just not possible. So it's a few quotes there. Let's jump through a couple more paragraphs and digest some of this. So veterans' compensation and pension benefits, as well as their readjustment benefits, could be delayed if Congress doesn't provide additional funding by September 20th, the deadline. So September 20th is the deadline. Collins joined Senate Appropriations Chair Patty Murray, Senators Brown, Boozman, Collins, Tester, Sinema, Moran, earlier in introducing this bill. The bill calls for upward of $2.8 billion in additional funding for the VA, appropriating about $2.3 billion for the Veterans Benefits Administration for compensation and pensions, as well as roughly $597 million for readjustment benefits. The bill also calls for the Government Accountability Office to review the circumstances surrounding and the causes of the shortfall and possible remedies the department may take in the future to improve annual budget submissions and prevent shortfalls, among other measures. That concludes it, and I'm going to tell you, and then I'll pass it over. It drives me nuts to see a department at this level, right? I worked at county level department and I ran that. This is like having the board of supervisors come in and have to manage your department for you and assign other people to figure out what's going on with your department because you can't figure it out yourself, and then give you recommendations on how to function your office. It blows my mind that that's what we have at the federal department level. It absolutely blows my mind. Chris, let's hear what you got.
Dude, I lost you as soon as you said John Boozman, like Republican, Arkansas, coolest name ever. I'm going to go get me a jersey with Boozman on it. But look, honestly, I kid a little bit, but everything that we're all saying here is very true. And you wouldn't have a very long career as an executive if you continually showed up this way. And, maybe there's a lot of stuff we don't know. Maybe there's things behind the scenes that people weren't paying attention to, and they are just using this as a political lever. But, it just seems like where there's smoke, there's fire here. And it's just sad because, again, who ends up getting hurt? The veterans. Randy, final thoughts?
Yeah, Senator Snow, Senator Collins, excuse me, sum this whole thing up here. I'm also incredibly frustrated with the VA because they had to know that they were underfunding these accounts. And I just don't buy the argument that they had no idea that's what was going to happen. That's just not possible. They had to have known. They have enough data analysts. They have enough, folks doing financial projections. There's enough horsepower that they had to know. If they didn't, then they are incompetent. If they did, then they weren't honest. So which one is it? There's not a third path here, guys. This is a cabinet level department. Again, this isn't getting a lot of play out there, but this is a massive screw up. And I just don't. I'm just with Jason. This whole thing is being outsourced to Congress to play forensic doctor to figure out what happened at the VA. And then the answer is, you got McDonough running across the hill, we need more money, throw more money at the problem. This is really concerning, folks. And unanimous consent, these things can get stalled. I don't think everybody's in town. My recollection from my days at DC was everybody gets out of Dodge. It's hot, it's humid, everybody's on vacation, to include Congress getting it in before the school year starts and everybody goes back to work in September. So there's probably not a lot of people around to play forensic doctor for the VA to figure out what in the hell's going on. So it leaves them with a binary option: throw $3 billion at this, or a whole bunch of veterans are out, or wait until the last stinking minute, which is going to be the middle of September. So yeah, I get it. Regardless of your political persuasion, people like Senator Collins are pissed, and rightfully so. And there's nothing coming out of the horse's mouth over at VA that is making any sense. Go to their website right now, va.gov, click news, click their press releases. That voice box that should be bringing a sense of calm and reason to this whole situation is awfully stinking quiet. That's what I got, Jason. I'll turn it over to you to close this out.
Yeah, and here's the thing, right? The secretary has already stated, I'm done. I am not going to be the secretary moving forward. I'll finish out my time in the Biden administration and then I'm out. Is he getting, did somebody have a conversation with him and say, look, you suck so bad, we're going to let you stay, but you're not going to keep staying regardless of who wins the election? Or does he see the writing on the wall himself? It's hard to say, but the bottom line is that now we have a lame duck as a secretary who already has, a foot and a half out of the VA. He's not thinking about it. Hopefully he is still, right? But there's definitely less on the table, if you will, for him with regard to his legacy, if you want to call it that. So, it's another funny thing too, that he's only the second non-veteran secretary of the VA. So we've had two ever. And, I'd like to just pose a question to you, both of you. Do you think that just maybe the Secretary of the Department of Veterans Affairs should be a honorably discharged active duty veteran. And what are your? I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Randy, we'll jump to you first, and then we'll hit Chris.
Yeah, if you haven't walked a mile in a man's shoes, it's hard to understand his perspective. You get somebody from outside of our community leading the department that helps our community. It could be problematic. Now, I know there's a lot of really skilled people that can lead organizations that they may not be, super in touch with. I often think back to the late, great football coach, Mike Leach. He wasn't much of a football player himself, but ended up being a reasonably successful college football player. So there are exceptions to the rules, but I think about how many, talented executive level veterans are out there that could plug into this problem set without an ego, without a golden parachute that they're looking for at some corporation as a consultant, and just sit down and get the basics in place. Our budget for next year is reasonably accurate. Our head count for next year is reasonably accurate. They've gone back and forth plus or minus 10,000 people over 2 weeks right now. I mean, I'm honestly, and I keep up with this stuff, I'm starting to lose track. I'm getting whiplash from what's coming out of their mouth. So, start with the basics, get your head count in place, get your budget in place, know your gaps. There's a lot of folks in the veteran community that could do that and do that well. And they've felt the pain. They've been a veteran. They understand. So that's my thought. Chris, over to you. And guys, don't hit me for bringing up Mike Leach. He's
I thought he was a great coach.
He was just somebody I was fond of. So.
Yeah. Hey, look. I mean, if you look at Secretary McDonald's background, he's never led anything. He's been a policymaker. He's been a chief of staff. He's never had to really run a business or make hard calls. And I'm not trying to take away from his commitment to serving this country, but I don't think it has anything to do with being a veteran or not. I mean, obviously you have to have passion for your customers. I lean on you guys because you've lived so much of this. I get blown away all the time about all the nooks and crannies that you guys know about. That's what you need, somebody that has the ability to think like an owner and think like a business executive and make decisions, but also live in the shoes of their customers. And because you could always just be an advocate, but you don't always know what you're advocating for. And so, I'm sure that this person's extremely qualified for lots of things. Just doesn't seem like he's qualified for a cabinet position.
Right. Yeah.
And so I wouldn't, yes, being a veteran would be nice. Being a veteran who has gone through the disability processes and understands the ins and the outs and, but that you don't have to have had that to be a great secretary of the VA, but you need to really have passion and energy and compassion about the situations that are thrust upon you and know enough and have the right people around you, not just a bunch of other policymakers.
Yeah. I could almost get behind it. I don't know. I'm kind of in the boat of, I think that a little service would be good. I think that, kind of like the Secretary of the Navy or the Secretary of whatever, I don't know. I think that it would be nice to have somebody who chewed some of the same dirt. Doesn't have to be a combat vet, but just somebody who understands. Maybe they filed a claim for their bad knee when they were 23 and they understood that process and they remembered the impact on their family and then when it finally got awarded, how that really helped them get past something and how much they relied on the VA and it's just a different aspect, I guess. I like that the county veteran service officers, they have to be a veteran in order to hold the highest position within the county organization for their veteran service offices. And I don't know. I think that if you had no other option, sure. But I think that should definitely be the preferred. So with that, McDonough's out. Everybody knows he's going to make it to the end of this presidential administration's term, and then he's out. So we'll see who we get next. Hopefully, whoever it is, I'll tell you what, man, I would not want that job now, to try to get in there and try to fix all this stuff. Oh my God, what a nightmare. So it's whoever takes it, I hope they got a lot of free time, because they're going to be using it to figure out problems. So with that, thank you guys so much for watching. We appreciate you so much. Hit the thumbs up for us. Subscribe if you haven't. Share with a friend, and we'll see you next time.